we're heading up into the valley. We'll do a little sightseeing and maybe a hike or two in one of those slot canyons. And then most of the rest of the travelogue will introduce you to the real deal, the man himself, Death Valley Scotty, the most colorful character of Death Valley. We are working our way north in Death Valley. We stopped at the sand dunes in that first video in this series, and we're continuing north right up into this area here, Scotty's Castle. We stayed mostly on the paved roads, but we also ventured off into the nearby back country. The roads seem to go forever and wind and twist and turn in all directions. But let me give you a little bit of something here. It's called advice. I'm going to write a book someday, and it's going to be titled Death by GPS. A good percentage of people have died by following their GPSs. Too many people think that they can run their GPS, but they can only half run it. Often your GPS can give you false and outdated information. It's like carrying a can of bear spray, thinking that you can be saved now from a bear that's attacking you. It's a false sense of security. We hiked into some of these narrow little canyons called slot canyons. They're pretty safe because they usually don't go anywhere much. My point about technology, by the way, is don't depend too much on technology, or you will join the crowd that is dead right. Technology cannot guarantee survival in the wild. Did you know that in many cases the best views are within a few dozen steps of where you can park your car? The park people know where the best views are, and they've run roads out to them. This idea that the best views are in the remote, dangerous backcountry often is promoted by only those who spent time and energy to hike into the backcountry, only to get a second-rate view. Stay around people, and often the views are both safer and better. Here are a few photos of the rough country up from the desert floor. If you do go into the backcountry, take along your GPS, but remember that it could be out of date and misleading. So in addition to a GPS, take along 3 other things to help you out. Number 1, take along a reliable compass and know how to use it. Number 2, a good map and know how to read it. And maybe this third thing is the most important of all, a personal locator that runs off satellites. These 3 things might save your life. If you're going to fool around in the backcountry, then go prepared. Now, one more thing, changing subjects with this photograph. I took the photograph in the middle of the day, and look at the gray, brownish kind of color. I took the same photograph, same place, at sunset, and notice the difference in the color. Look at the color difference. I've told you before that I do not use any special lenses or anything on my camera, but the desert gives you changing colors. We found several of these narrow slot canyons that were nice, safe, and easy hikes. The only real danger in these little narrow canyons would be a flash flood. So just keep aware of the weather, and you should have no trouble in avoiding a flash flood. We used a single hiking pole. We were lazy, should have used 2. The colors in the canyons were really interesting. Very little chance of running onto any kind of snakes or scorpions, mainly because there was a lot of people hiking up and down these little canyons. We saw cases where geological pressure pressed different rocks side by side over the many centuries. It was some of these canyons were very interesting. There were times we felt like dwarfs amongst giants. Look how the water has smoothed out these rocks over the years. We had to climb up some steep places on the way up these little canyons. And here's my wife. We had to slide down like on a slide, on a skid, in order to get back down again. And notice our hiking poles. None of this amateur show-off stuff for us. We took the easiest way out we could. And I might say enjoyed every minute of it. We're just driving up to the castle now, and you will enjoy this fella too. His name is Death Valley Scotty. You're looking at Death Valley Scotty in the young days when I was a young fella and clean-shaven. That is how I was back in the 1920s when we built the castle. We built it in the north end of an area they made into a park, a national park, then they call it Death Valley today. Here is the castle. You're looking at it. My castle. While we tour the rooms, I can tell you it was my castle. That is why they call it Scotty's Castle. I built it with my own money I got from all those rich hidden gold mines way back out in the backcountry where nobody knows about. Anyway, that's what I told everybody. Only me and Albert and his wife, only we knew the real truth. Actually, I was never very lucky at ever finding gold. But I found good luck at spending other people's money. I got real lucky when I ran across a fella who had a lot of money and loved Death Valley and was ready to and willing to put a lot of money into it. His name was Albert Johnson, and he became a real good friend of mine. Albert was loaded with money from his family who got rich in the mining business in the Midwest there somewhere. And, Albert made a lot of money in the health insurance business, and it is just as big a rip-roaring business today as it was 100 years ago. Here we are. Albert is on the left, and his wife, Bessie, in the middle. They were both religious as all get out, and they were total teetotalers and tolerated no drink by the construction workers. Bessie preached a sermon to the construction workers every Sunday, and it was long and rambling and boring, but they were her employees, so they had to suffer through it. But a lot of the boys could and did, both a lot of cursing and drinking. And as a result, there was a lot of crews who got fired. For a while, we used to say there were 3 crews. 1 crew coming, 1 crew going, and 1 crew working. There was a lot of good times on the ranch, as we called it, the Death Valley Ranch. And you can see in the 1920s the kind of construction stuff, and she was a good time. The tours started to come in. There were fires and floods since then, but the national park now owns it, and they'll do it right and fix her up, and the tourists are going to be coming again. Even when we first went into Death Valley with Scotty, I knew that he knew that all my claims to have rich gold mines on the wilderness areas was as phony as a $2 bill. He saw right through me, but he liked the desert country, and the dry climate seemed to make his aches and pains go away. So he and Bessie decided to stay and build. It's funny how the road of life can take you down different twists and turns and side roads that you're not expecting. Now you take, for example, here's Albert Johnson, my friend. He went to university, became educated, and he's going down the road of life on the Black Road here, going into mining. His dad was a big miner, made a lot of money in it, and they were in the Midwest part of the country at that time. But look at the X here. Something came up that changed Albert's life. A train wreck. He was riding with his dad. The train crashed. The father was killed, and my friend was injured, back injury for a long time, and bothered and pained with it. He just couldn't handle the rigors of the mining life. Long rides on trains out to mines, walking through rough country. He couldn't do it anymore. So I met him in Chicago, and he was looking to spend a little money and invest in something else. And he liked the climate in Death Valley. And that's when he ran on to me, Scotty. In my case, who would have ever dreamt that I would end up with a castle named after me? But the castle here was not my first rodeo. I learned to be a shifty corner cutter, swindler, and con man long before the castle in Death Valley. When I was a young feller, I worked part-time as a behind-the-scenes cowhand on the famous Buffalo Bills Wild West show. And I learned a few things about selling and promoting things. One time I got into a sweet deal to promote fast trains. Railroads were just starting to get popular, and cities promoted themselves by being associated with the new modern way of travel, the trains. We snorted out of Los Angeles, headed for Chicago, and a new railway speed record. Some called the train the Scotty Special. Some called it the Coyote Special. Some called it the Death Valley Coyote. It did not matter. We beat that old train record by 8 hours, tearing into Chicago at nearly 100 kilometers an hour. It was a record that lasted 30 years. Everybody in those days knew who I was. Then I got into the mining business. I conned both naive, hungry individual investors and banks. They were always hoping I had found some mother lode up in the Death Valley gold mine. Well, as long as they never came around, they'd never know otherwise. But there was one time I had these investors who insisted on coming out to where I had claimed I had a rich mine. They just wouldn't listen, and they arrived in Los Angeles, and I just had to take them somewhere out into Death Valley. I still tried to scare them off. I told them that it was really dangerous out there with rattlesnakes, unbearable heat, and hostile Indians. They didn't care. They had put up a lot of money, and they insisted on seeing where their investment was at. So I cooked up this idea of getting a couple of guys to hide out behind some rocks along the trail, dress up like Indians with war paint and head feathers, and shoot at our wagon. But, of course, to shoot well above our heads. I figured that would scare them off once and for all. Trouble was, we were late getting away, and those guys out in the rocks started sipping on the bottle to kill time. By the time we got there, they were pretty well lubricated up. When they saw us, they started shooting. I yelled, "Indians, Indians, run for your lives, everybody!" Then one of the investors screams, I'm hit! They shot me!" Well, I can tell you that panicked me. I ran out from behind the wagon and down the trail, waving my arms, yelling, Stop shooting, you damn fools! You hit us! The next thing I remember, one of those investors, he's yelling at me. "You know these guys?" Well, as you might guess, needless to say, I lost a good investor. They tried to haul me into court afterwards and charge me with mischief and fraud, but over time I was able to weasel my way out of that, and that's when I met my man, and we built a castle in Death Valley. Those days at the Death Valley Ranch were the best of my life. Al and Bessie and I were all good friends. He always said what he liked best about me was that I made him laugh. Albert and Bessie had their priorities straight. They knew what they liked and didn't like, and they never let either the situation or people get in the way. Albert was a quiet kind of a guy, never mingled much with all the guests who came out to the ranch. Often he would sit by himself along one wall while we were all partying it up. Every once in a while, a guest would notice him over there sitting by himself, and he'd go over to and ask him who he was. And Al would just smile and quietly say, "Oh, I'm just Scotty's banker." Was he ever? Unfortunately, all good things come to an end, and it crashed to a sudden, unsuspecting end. After several good days at the ranch, the folks loaded up the car and headed back to Los Angeles. Albert liked to drive fast, and the car rolled. Bessie was killed right at the scene, and Albert really never came back. Albert always kept the money coming, so I had a place to live out the rest of my days here at the ranch. Come on out to the ranch sometime and visit. Tell them old Scotty sent you. Maybe you can see the maze of tunnels. See maybe those mini batteries we use for electrical storage from the power we got up from the water in the Grapevine Canyon. Maybe you'll see the roof tiles still piled up waiting to be installed. I was never a builder. Maybe you can, when you're there, walk up the little hill and visit my gravesite. My good old dog Windy, who's lying up there with me, will be waiting for you. It's a deal just too good to be true. You can't afford to pass it up. You know, if you, we're pulling out of Death Valley here, but if you've seen that other travelogue I made on the Hearst Castle in California here, the point I made there, and it's true with the Scotty's Castle, it's not the building or the things that you see. It's really the characters and the people and the stories behind those scenes and buildings that really make it interesting and worthwhile. And that's the kind of thing that I try to do in my travelogues. So if you like that approach, we're going to be going to other places and meeting some other characters and seeing about information about the place. And if you like that approach, like I say, hit the subscribe button. It'll tell you when more videos are coming. So we'll see you on down the road. This is I Go Travel with Don Barnett. So long for now.